Mix in the Dark.
Hey, what's up? It's MaiYang from Mix in the Dark. By the time you guys listen to this episode, it will be after March 8th. I am actually recording on March 8th, and today is International Women's Day. So shout outs to all of the wonderful women out there. It's hard being a woman. It really is. I had a conversation with my husband the other night about how he can never understand what it's like to be a woman, and it's simply because he just isn't one. I used the analogy that you can't say, I feel your pain to someone who has a broken leg when you've never actually had a broken leg yourself. Like, it just doesn't work. You cannot understand the pain. Nothing against anyone out there, and I'm really not going to go into politics because it is what it is. It's International Women's Day, so we're just going to celebrate the women out there. I am so grateful to be surrounded by really strong women figures in my life and happy that I'm able to share my experiences with these same women. My household that I grew up in had 9 women total. That's 7 sisters, my mom, and my grandma. And so I grew up in a house full of girls. We all had different roles in order for our household to function, and it is so interesting to see how each of our lives played out based on all of our roles. My mom was a strong woman figure for me. I feel bad because I did not know a lot of the really negative things that were happening around her until she passed away, and that's when all of those things kind of just spilled out. She was really good at keeping all of that away from us. She was shielding us from all of those negative things, and I appreciate her so much for that. So I celebrate her and other mothers who have really fought for their children to have peace of mind. I truly want to be that kind of mom because we all know that being a mom is not easy at all. And not everyone has a mom that they can look up to. But I'm happy to say that I do have a mom that I'm able to look up to. I always joke that which in English means I am a pretty fluster-minded person. I make lists of things to look at. So at work, I'm a teacher. At home, I'm a mom. And these lists get pretty crazy. I find that I need a little boost of energy, which is why I'm really into Magic Mind right now. I always feel I am able to check off the things on my list when I have a little help. Magic Mind is a mental performance shot, and I've been putting this in my daily routine, and I'm just really excited to share that with you guys because I feel like it's been a hack to my life. I always make sure to put one in my lunch bag in the morning right away, and so when I get to school, I just give it a little shake, I twist the cap open, and it takes me 2 seconds to drink it. Magic Mind has helped me to be on my feet, and I feel like I have enough energy to do a lot of things, and that includes playing with my son. He feels like he does not get enough attention from us, and so I've been making it a goal to hang out with him and to play with him and to actually just be present for him. I'm pretty happy that my subscription to Magic Mind is pretty on time. A lot of companies are not good at this. It is also delivered with no delivery fee every single month, and I don't know if you're into cute little compact things like I am, but that's Magic Mind's bottle packaging. It is so cute and it is so easy to store. It does not take up any space at all, and it just sits in my fridge. Right now, Magic Mind is doing something special for my listeners. You can get your Magic Mind subscription at magicmind.com/inthedark. You will be able to get up to 48% off with my code. My code is INTHEDARK, the dark. I encourage you to try a monthly subscription just because it's like any product that you try. It takes a couple of consistent days for it to work. So try it out. And if you don't like it, the cancellation process is actually very easy. You just click a few buttons online and you can cancel it that way. You can also get 100% of your money back on your first order if you happen to not like it. There's no judgment, no questions asked. You just get your money back. And with that said, we're off to our stories. This episode highlights the experience of a medium and her stay at a hospital. Happy International Women's Day to this brave medium and to all of you for being yourself. Please enjoy. I went to the hospital this past week for an MRI. My appointment was pretty late, so it was nice and quiet. As I walked across the threshold, I felt as though I had the building's attention. It was as though it was acutely aware of me and watching. Mentally, I thought to myself, there's nothing interesting about me. Just getting an MRI. Don't watch me. I got in and turned the corner of the darkened hall. I saw a lone security guard who suddenly sat up watching me with interest. It was late, so he was probably bored and had someone finally come in. He looked at me with curiosity. Finally, he said, "Are you here for an MRI or visiting someone?" I replied, "MRI." He gestured for me to go ahead. As I am walking, I feel his eyes on me. I looked back. He turned around in his seat and looked at me with interest. I quickly checked to make sure there wasn't toilet paper hanging off my shoes and that I did remember to put my pants on. I was confused because he looked at me in a very peculiar way, but I saw nothing that would make me interesting looking. I made my way down the empty hall to the elevator. I pushed the button. Suddenly, I felt someone rush up behind me and just stood there. It was a kind of awkward feeling because this person was extremely close to my back. I looked over my shoulder and there was no one in sight. The elevator door dinged open and I stepped in. I turned and pushed my button. A man suddenly rushed past me and stood in the back of the elevator. I looked at him from the corner of my eyes. He doesn't push a button. He just stood there staring straight ahead. I thought that maybe he was going for an MRI as well, or maybe he just worked there. The door opened. I got off and started to walk away. The man continued to stand there and the doors shut on him. As I approached another hallway and about to turn right, I came across a young girl just sitting perched on top of the ABM. She just stared at me. I turned right, and the corridor was dark except for a light coming from the end of the hallway. This hallway was so dark, and there were construction tarps hanging from the ceiling. It looked like some renovations were being done. That whole feeling of the entire building watching me hasn't left, by the way. It still feels as though it is extremely interested in me and watching every single step I take. I plodded down the dark hallway toward the other cross-section I must reach. As I passed the tarps, they billowed gently as though a wind was stirring them. I looked up at the darkened mirror on the corner of the ceiling, and thankfully, no one was there. I turned right again. At the end of this hallway is the door to the MRI room. It's the only room with the lights on. It casted a small glow that left all the other offices' waiting room sections dark and in shadows. I perked up a bit seeing the light coming from the door. As I passed a section of empty seats, I saw a man sitting in the dark, perched on the back of a chair in the furthest corner. He silently sat in the shadows watching me with interest as I walked past. I turned and looked at him, but I couldn't see his face as it was too dark in the hall. But I can make out the movement of him turning and watching as I passed by. Finally, I got to the door. I walked in the brightly lit room and sighed with relief. I checked in. I changed into my gown. I got my IV. Then I toddled into the room where the nurse crammed me into the machine. The MRI noises start. Finally, there was a break in the noise and I heard shuffling feet. The nurse touched the IV tubing on my arm and injected the contrast into my IV. I heard footsteps receding. The noise of the machine started again. I was told to hold my breath. Then, over the speaker, the nurse talked to me from the other room. "Okay, you're doing great. I'll be inside in a moment to check your IV and inject the contrast," she said. Confused, I asked, "Weren't you just in here injecting the contrast? I thought I heard you walking around." The nurse replied, "Nope, tonight it's just me and the technician. We're both in the other room watching the machine." I said again, "Oh, okay, well I thought I heard you in here and I felt you lift my tubing." There was a pause. Then the nurse said, Nope, no one was in there. You're alone in the room." I was not so sure about all of that. It also made me wonder about the people I passed while making my way to the MRI. Were they real? Did someone follow me? Or did they simply have the MRI turned up to max volume or something? It was my second night at the hospital. My child came to visit me after work. He brought a few things from home that I needed. He helped me with dinner and told me about his day. All the while, nurses came in and out of the room as there were 2 additional patients in my room. Both of them elderly and frequently calling for the nurses. It was a busy, active time early in the evening. I sat on my bed while my son brushed my hair. I was facing the door to the hallway. I heard a squeak of wheels coming down the hallway. Suddenly, my son stopped brushing my hair and sat in a chair beside my bed. He turned and faced away from my bed, adjusting things with his back to the door. I looked up to ask why he suddenly stopped brushing my hair. That was when I saw an elderly woman standing in the middle of the room with her walker. She made direct eye contact with me and was grinning from ear to ear. Nurses rushed past her and kitchen staff passed right by her but took no notice of her. She stood right on the threshold of the doorway but made no move to come in. She lifted her hand and slowly waved at me. I turned to my son and asked, "Do you see the elderly lady standing in the doorway grinning at me?" My son replied that he saw no one but the nurses. I looked up again and the elderly lady was gone. I asked the nurse where the old lady had gone, but she said no one was in the hallway but her and the kitchen staff. My son wouldn't meet my eyes. He can see other things as well, but doesn't like to acknowledge or pay attention. He has no interest in being a medium. He doesn't like the things that he sees. After a few moments, he finished my hair and said he was leaving. He needed to cut his visit short, but that he would visit me another day. I nodded, knowing why he was leaving and that he wouldn't talk about it, but I was comforted that he did at least see what I saw and that I wasn't loony. Later that night, I woke up around 1 a.m. I was still half asleep and wondering what woke me up. And then I heard the quiet squeak of walker wheels coming down the hallway. It stopped just inside my room's doorway. I felt eyes locked onto me. I laid there quietly and kept my eyes shut. I slowly rolled over so that my back was to the door. I heard the squeak coming closer to the side of my bed. My eyes shut. I just laid there pretending to be asleep, mentally reciting a mantra in my head. I tried to be still, although my heartbeat was as loud as ever. I felt her leaning over me. Just when I thought my heart would burst, I heard the squeak of the wheels and the room felt empty again. I had troubles going back to sleep that night, but eventually sleep won. The next morning, the physiotherapist brought a walker to my room. They wanted to see if I could walk using one. I asked where they got it as the nurse before told me that there were no extras. She paused for a split second and said, "We had an elderly patient here that no longer needed it, so we just thought of you." I nodded. The physiotherapist unfolded it and started to wheel it toward me. I asked if the patient went home, and she reminded me that she cannot give me information about another patient. I used the walker during my stay, but every night at 1 a.m. for the next 10 days, I would lay in bed hearing the squeak of the wheels going down the hallway. They would then stop outside my door. I would feel someone staring at my back for a few minutes, and then they would squeak back down where they came from. The next part is something that happened on the third night of my hospital stay. It happened during the early morning hours as usual. This time, I think it was about 3 a.m. I heard the squeaking sounds of the walker down the hall as usual. Same routine as the night before. A pause outside my door. Feeling of someone staring, and then wheels squeaking back down the hallway. After the old woman left, I almost fell back to sleep. I rolled over and saw a woman sitting on the chair next to my bed. She was a beautiful, mature lady, Indonesian. She showed herself as being dressed in an old-fashioned, traditional dancer-type clothes. Her hair was pulled up on her head and ornamented. She showed herself sitting at a mirror and applying a dark red lipstick to her lips. As I laid there talking to her and watching her get ready, I heard a gurgling noise and felt a cold chill down my spine. This thick, wet, gurgling sound was at the door. A guttural, almost growling sound, but not like any dog I've ever heard. I instinctively looked toward the door and saw a man-like thing dragging himself into my room, all shadowy and crumpled as though someone crushed whoever or whatever it was, but it wasn't put together again properly. I couldn't quite see it, only pieces and flashes. Slowly it started to lift and turned its head toward me. It had my attention maybe a second or two before the lady demanded I looked at her. "Don't look. Just watch me. Pay attention to me and don't see that," she said. I nodded, and out of the corner of my eyes, I saw it drag itself back out of my room, making a wet, snuffling sound as it went. "Go to sleep," she said. I laid my head back onto my pillow, and when I looked at the chair again, it was empty, and just a hint of fragrance of flowers lingered in the air. Thank you for listening to Mix in the Dark. I am your host, MaiYang. Mix in the Dark is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast series. If you have a story that you would like to share, please send it to myxinthedark@gmail.com. If there's a story that you really enjoyed, feel free to hit up my tip jar on Venmo. Just search Mix in the Dark on the business tab.